at LarsLarson.com. Now, back to the Lars Larson Show.
Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. One of the amazing little coincidences I see is that the liberal Democrats tend to come out and say, we're defending democracy, even though America is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic, and we have a representative form of government, but they don't seem to understand that. And then you see a lot of the groups that actually go out and carry water for the liberal Democrats are using not the representative part of our government to make changes, but they go to the courts, where the people are largely not represented at all. And liberal activists have figured out they can't ban guns or shut down energy companies through the legislature or the Congress, so they're doing it through the courts instead. I thought we'd talk about that with O.H. Skinner, who is executive director of the Alliance for Consumers Action. Welcome to the program, sir. How are you?
Thanks, Lars. It's always good to be on with you.
So tell me this, is there a way to forbid activist groups from using this mechanism to make changes in our society without even a scrap of representation for the general public?
Yeah, what you need is look, we all saw how the Biden administration tried to shove progressive lifestyle down all of our throats, right? Making your dishwashers worse, your washing machines, your cars. Well, they've gone to court now, and their game is the same, right? You identified it. They want to take away your guns or change what you can buy at home or ban products. And the number one thing you can do is, in your states, they can go and basically take away the number one tool that the bad guys use, right? They like to use public nuisance lawsuits to control what you can buy. And then they like to use other lawsuits to unlock money off of things like pro-crime policies. And it's not hard, right? Like, you just say, you're not allowed to use public nuisance lawsuits to go after licensed and lawful products. You're not allowed to go after guns. You're not allowed to go after cars. And all of a sudden, boom, the lefties don't have access to that lever to control your life anymore.
And it would still leave open to them if they said, well, you're not letting us make the changes. Say, fine. If you want the changes made, persuade a large number of the American public. They will tell their representatives, we want a law against this. And then the representatives will go and vote for it. Except I think the left knows they can't get the public talked over to their point of view, can they?
See, and that's the point, right? Ultimately, if you want to be a loony who lives in California in a tiny house with no air conditioning, I'm serious, Lars. Like, California is showing the way. They've passed all these nutty laws. You can't get a plastic straw. You can't buy a normal house. You can't get air conditioning. You have to buy an electric car. And that's fine for them, honestly. Like, as a consumer advocate, if that's what they want in loony land over there, good for them. But what we're saying and what you just said is, if you want to get those kinds of lifestyles imposed on people in Kansas, imposed on people in Oklahoma, imposed on people in Texas, you're not allowed to just go to court. You don't have to convince the majority of the nation. You should have to convince the people in Missouri, Kansas, Kentucky, Texas to live that loony lifestyle, right? That's how you do it. You're not allowed to impose your California lifestyle by one court action in real America. That's not how our system works. Like, you're talking about constitutional republics and, democracy. This goes so far beyond that. They're just trying to not even try at the ballot box and flip one past. And all of a sudden, the people in real America wonder why everything around them looks like California when they chose to live nowhere near California.
I'm talking to O.H. Skinner, who's executive director of the Alliance for Consumers Action. Would you mind telling my audience about what just happened in Kansas, where you had a bill that said, let's limit the use of public nuisance lawsuits? And the governor said, no, let's not. And she was going to veto it. And the Republicans had to override her. And the people's representatives had to tell the governor, no, you're not going to do this.
That's exactly right. Look, we pressed forward with a law that was really simple. It said you can't use public nuisance lawsuits to go after licensed, lawful, regulated products. If somebody has a license or a government certification to sell a gun, a car, a water heater, whatever, you can't use public nuisance. You could try to use public nuisance if somebody dumps something in a river illegally. You can use it for a lot of other things, right? But you can't use it for lawfare. You can't use it to control people. Well, the governor, who's a Democrat, vetoes it. And going back to your point, a supermajority, like over 60% of the legislature in both houses, flipped her and said no more lawfare. They said the governor's trying to make it so that there's more lawfare in Kansas. that the courts in Kansas get to tell everybody what to live like. And this supermajority, every single Republican basically lined up behind and flips the governor. Why? Because you and I both know that when elected representatives are asked, should the courts get to decide what my constituents live like? Should they get to decide whether they're allowed to afford a big enough car to have 3 kids or 4 kids in their family? You know, the answer is no. Like, that's not for courts to decide, right? And so I think this shows the future, right? Like, look, the little understood thing here is that President Trump is in D.C. He's pushing back on these public nuisance lawsuits. His Department of Justice is suing over them. But what we do know is that the libs don't think that they're going to be able to use the EPA or the Department of Energy for at least 3 more years, right?
Yep.
And so they're going to go to state courts. They're going to go all around and try to push their stuff through lawsuits. So now is the time in Kansas and in other states to basically seal off their escape hatch, right? And make them actually deal with the realities of the world.
And I guess, this is the part that ought to, I mean, I understand why they insulated the federal judges from public, pressure. They said, we don't want them to be public pressured by the public. We don't want the mob outside to say, lynch that guy. So they insulated the judges. They're appointed for life. They're largely unanswerable to anybody except theoretically the Congress can impeach them, but that doesn't happen very often. It's been a long time since Alcee Hastings got that. And so the liberals say, let's have the judges go and decide this. And you go, who elected them? Nobody. They were appointed. Well, how long are they appointed for? For life. And when they get old and they don't want to do it anymore, they can get paid the same salary to be a, whatever it is, pro tem judge or whatever. And you go, so these people are just completely unaccountable. Right. Those are the people we want making the decisions about society. Great.
What's even loopier is in federal court, these libs keep losing. When they bring these nuisance suits in federal court, they lose. So they've turned to the state courts, which, as you know, even if they don't have lifetime protection, they have systems built so that the trial lawyers are picking the judges through these state bar systems, and they've set up their own little kabuki. And so one path is to basically flip the judges and make them look a lot more like the federal government, and there's a lot of arguments for that. And another path is you just take away their tool. You take their public nuisance and you break it so that they can't use it for their goofy things, but that it's still available. Because ultimately, what's amazing is the life tenure judges in the federal courts are telling these people to take a hike. It's only when the trial lawyers are picking with the state bar and all of the activists in these states and limiting who can get appointed to the courts. Kansas has a more liberal court than the legislature. Why? They have this plan and the system that allows the Democratic governor and the trial lawyers to pick the judges, right? Like,
exactly right. That is O.H. Skinner, and O.H. is the executive director of the Alliance for Consumers Action. O.H., we always appreciate you coming on the show. Yeah, it gets a little crazy, but imagine this. The folks from the Democrat Party arguing, we're going to protect democracy by taking away the people's representatives and what they have to say about something and doing it through judges who are unelected and unaccountable instead. If that makes sense to you, ask your favorite Democrat how that adds up. You got the Lars Larson